Let me now turn to Darren Lovas, who is a Vehicle Campaign Director at NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council. Give us your perspective. We've heard a little bit about the infrastructure and some of the perspective from the utility side of things. Your organization was, of course, involved in this study that was mentioned. Can you tell us, from the environmental perspective, where do you see plug-in technology and the broader electrification of transport fitting in?
Sure, and we're proud to have collaborated with EPRI and look forward to more of the same in the future. For us, what needs to happen, particularly with the light-duty vehicle portion of the transportation sector, is a flip. And actually, on that note, in this week's automotive news, the headline is, "A wild ride as market flips to small cars." We live in incredible times, and we need to flip the whole light-duty vehicle subsector so that it is, as opposed to 96% dependent on oil-derived fuels, it only uses 10% of such fuels by 2050. So that's a huge delta that we need to fill between here and 2050. What goes into that delta? The majority of it will be vehicle efficiency, improved efficiency of our vehicles through more lightweighting, improved drivetrains, et cetera. A portion of it will be next generation biofuels, and a portion of it will be plug-in hybrids, and a portion of it we think will also be a decrease in vehicle miles traveled, and that's another trend line that we see emerging over the past few years, is a moderation in vehicle miles traveled. So that's what we need to do. It is a huge change by 2050 to decarbonize this portion of the transportation sector. The good news is that we're taking big steps in terms of policy. We took two very big ones in last year's energy bill, putting into place higher fuel economy standards for light-duty vehicles. And for the first time ever, and this is a little-known fact, we required fuel economy standards to be set for heavy-duty vehicles as well. So that's what we did last year. Something that's overlooked is that the next biggest step that we could take to decarbonize the sector is to put in place an economy-wide cap-and-trade system. We actually analyzed the potential effects of the Lieberman-Warner bill on light-duty vehicles and found that by 2050, more than 60% of the fleet would be plug-in hybrids in the most aggressive scenario that we analyzed. And that's just with cap and trade, along with the complementary policy of a low-carbon fuel standard, which was also in the bill, and that may be a little-known fact. So what people may not realize is that there would be a huge squeeze put on oil and oil imports when we put a cap-and-trade system into place with a declining cap over time. A climate bill really is also an anti-oil addiction bill. So that's something that we need to make sure that people know about, because unfortunately the debate last week was very truncated and very political, and we need to make sure that there's more light than heat around this topic when Congress and the new administration take it up next year.
Very good. I know our panel on federal policies will pick up on this in much more detail tomorrow, but it does sound like you see plug-in hybrids as one of the important parts of this portfolio of technologies that you see.
They're a big part of the future. By 2050, we see all vehicles being flex fuel vehicles and nearly all vehicles being plug-in vehicles. So they're a very big part of the future.
Great. Let me turn to Chelsea Sexton, Executive Director of Plug-in America. And for the cognoscenti in the room, you'll know she's also one of the stars of Who Killed the Electric Car? So we have a real celebrity in our midst. Tell us a little bit, Chelsea, when you're not hobnobbing with the George Clooney's and Ed Begleys, I know that you're also known as someone who hobnobs with the grassroots, as playing an important role in organizing the grassroots movement for plugins. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're hearing and how that movement has evolved? We've talked about, of course, the policy and the economic and technical issues, but doesn't the heart of this movement have to depend upon people actually wanting to drive these cars?
Very much so. She blushes really easily, too. So Plug-in America is an organization that is composed primarily of former or current EV drivers or plug-in hybrids, or those who wish they had them. It's a consumer, very grassroots organization. It's one that grew very organically out of action. When vehicles were being crushed and this group of people said, you know, we kind of just can't stand by and let this happen without being noticed. And so it grew from a series of campaigns to save cars into an effort to get more cars built and to work in 3 primary areas. We do some work with the industry. We work directly with automakers, big and small, helping them understand the market, doing a lot of interpreting between sort of the industry, usually sequestered back in the middle of the country somewhere, and the consumers. We work with the policymakers, both to create new policy as well as rehab old policy. So we work on state level in California with folks like CARB, and we work on federal level and also some local level stuff. And we do a lot of work directly with consumers. Consumer education, teaching people what's possible, getting them to ask for it. And we find that those 3 elements really do push against each other a lot, but they're very mired in kind of a chicken and egg dilemma. Policymakers don't want to make policies and create incentives for vehicles that they don't know are coming. Automakers stand on this premise of we want to build cars that people are requesting by the millions, and people aren't requesting plug-in cars in that sort of volume, ergo they must not want them. And we kind of stand back going, we run around the country and most people don't even know that electric cars or plug-in hybrids are possible. So we face this challenge, I use this iPod analogy lately, that how many of us looked at our Walkmans about 15 years ago and said, gosh, I wish this was the size of a deck of cards and I could watch TV on the thing? We didn't know we wanted iPods until they were here. So we spend a lot of time, working with a bunch of other organizations, kind of the grout between the tiles, as it were, but running around showing people the iPod and getting them to ask for it. And we are known to do it sometimes in non-traditional ways. It was actually pointed out right before the panel by David Sandelow that this is the most obedient he's ever seen me, as we were lining us up for the panel, and I think that's got to stop right now, actually. So we're known to do it very traditionally sometimes. We're also known to do it a little bit more feisty. We did put Bob Lutz's email address on the internet, but at the same time, GM's doing the Volt, so I certainly won't take credit for it, but I don't mind whatever little part that played. And we also have done some lesser traditional communication devices. A few years ago, we decided there was not nearly enough conversation about this subject, and so few people got together and did what you do when you're from LA and no one will tell your story, and we made a movie. And there are at least 4 of my co-stars in this audience, and I'm not above outing them. There might be more. And we are working on a sequel, and the premise of it is sort of who's resurrecting, who's saving the electric car. So, we're an organization that grew out of action, so we believe in giving tools of action to other people. So you guys all have homework to resurrect the electric car so we can make a movie about it.
Wow, fantastic. So you heard it here first, folks. Who saved the electric car, starting in this room? Curtain call and casting next door to follow during the break.